Alrighty, how's
Hey,
everybody doing?
pretty good. Pretty good. And to those out there, how's everybody doing? I'm here with the esteemed Burgermeister again for another episode. How's it going?
Well, it's just been busy. I've been packing up and coordinating with my new job and moving to an unspecified location that is significantly colder than where I'm at now. Um and so it's uh it's an interesting change, which is actually a lot of the topic of what I wanted to talk about this week, which is for a more lighthearted topic that's not quite as deep and meaty as the stuff we've been talking about lately, and you know, provides a lot of our target audience something that's a little bit less mentally heavy, I guess. Um, just nature, you know, just different environments, different activities, different things about this great planet we live on, and the things that God naturally gives us in the wild, and just covering different aspects of what we enjoy about that, I suppose. Pretty unstructured. Um, I haven't really thought up this detailed point list of things to talk about, but I just figured it'd be a general topic. So, you know, I guess I'll let you start off if there's anything you want to start first before I go on about my little spiel.
Well, certainly I'm an appreciator of God's green earth and, you know, being in the state that I'm in, it's nice that there's a lot of water around us. And growing up, you know, could always anticipate summer, being out on the lake and having just that appreciation of it all around you. And then, summer's probably my favorite season. Uh, and it just reminds me of everything that's that things instead of being cooped up and inside and not being able to do much of anything. I guess podcasting's a good hobby for that. But I like to be outside. I cut the grass on a weekly basis in the summertime just so I can get outside and do some yard work and get that much to sit around and not do anything.
Yeah, it's funny from my perspective talking about. Well, I go outside in the summer just to be outside in the summer, because down here that is when you don't want to be outside. You know, July, August when it's 100+ degrees outside, plus humidity, heat index. It's nah. You want to get all your outside chores done early in the morning or late in the evening, because middle of the day it is not fun. Um, Now, in other seasons, sort of the other half of the year, because people have a certain definition of summer. Well, Texas summer is May through October, like or I should say through September. It ends in October, but yeah, that's really about half the year, and the other half of it is just, I guess, winter. We have a spring and a fall, but it's not really much, especially not the fall. It kind of just goes straight from summer into our moderate winter. And then there's a little spring period for about a month or two. Um, but yeah, when you live in what amounts to a subtropical climate, it's a little different for sure. Winter's usually very wet, very rainy. Um, it can be nice outside of that. Now, recently, though, this past winter, we had an interesting little event happen in February, what's often called the Arctic Blast. And that was something that Texas was not prepared for. There, there's a lot of theories behind what exactly happened with our power companies, and what may have been going on behind the scenes there. But outside of that, I mean, it messed everything up. Like, people were without power for up to 2 weeks in some areas, um, just because of how it was managed. But yeah, like they had outdoor generation facilities, which normally isn't a problem at all. But then, would they all freeze up, which just never happens. Like this is highly unusual when it was getting down to, just about sub-zero temperatures, almost. It didn't quite get to that, but it was very, very close. Um, and so, yeah, you're probably laughing because up there, that's normal in the wintertime. Um, though I imagine around the Great Lakes, it's not so much the actual temperatures getting super cold as much as it is the precipitation and the snowfall from Great Lake effect.
Oh yeah, we get terrible lake effect sometime. As it comes over, it can just build momentum, and from winter storms to summer storms, all of that can just be such a awful experience. Especially on the west side of the state and through Chicago. Oof, they get just pounded with snow at times, I feel. And then you said something about the Arctic blast, which went all the way down the United States. That was crazy because we get the polar vortex up here at times, and we may get a lot of the brunt of it sometimes, and other times, we barely get a touch of it. So it's kind of a toss up when it comes to that kind of weather for us.
Yeah, and in Colorado, well, there I done said it, but yeah, it's a state, it's a big place. But up there, you know, it's definitely a little different. You've got valleys. You've got because that's where I'm going is a valley, and you've got mountain ranges up that kind of hold out large weather patterns. So what you'll get is very much dictated by the geography around you in terms of the mountain ranges, which is why the weather varies all over the state. Like if you're in eastern Colorado, where it's still the Great Plains, you'll have the same weather patterns as you would have in Kansas or eastern Wyoming. Um, but once you hit the Rockies, it's a totally different climate in the interior Rockies and the valleys, and then also towards the more westerly part of the Rockies near Utah, where it's just very high mountainous peaks. Um, gets very, very cold up there. Um, but yeah, where I'm at, you get cold winters for sure. Plenty of snow. There's a lot of moisture that's stored in the tops of these mountains that will melt during the summertime, and then it'll evaporate, and then it'll create weather patterns. Um, but the summers are nice. Very temperate, very moderate. Never really gets above 80 degrees, which to me is phenomenal. You know, Apparently people there just think it's dreary hot at that temperature, which to me that sounds, like that's like a temperature I'd go out and have a nice old stroll in. But of course, conversely, I'm going to go up there and have to get used to this winter, which is going to be hitting almost immediately after I get up there. So, but I had a little taste of it, I guess, recently in February. So hopefully that'll give me a little bit of preparation. I'm not new to wintertime. I've lived in Texas most of my life, but I've lived for several years in northeastern states. that do have respectable winters of their own. A little bit less intense on the actual weather pattern side because they're not next to the Great Lakes. But in terms of latitude, it's not something I'm unfamiliar with.
Oh yeah, I mean, you would never get used to the biting wind. That's probably the wind and the frost. Ugh, the worst parts of winter. I could take, the snow, not too bad, but when it comes to just that bitter cold, that's the worst. And it's even worse when snow's on the ground. But not to be, I don't want to be talked too negatively about it. The cold is tolerable when there's no snow on the ground. So I guess that's a good thing. But yeah, getting used to winter, I don't ever think I ever can get used to it. In fact, I just don't look forward to it ever. And we had kind of an unusual winter this past winter where it didn't snow although almost all the way up until February. The first week of February, it came and it didn't stop for a period of time. And then nothing. So, but December, oh yeah, December was the snow too. It snowed okay, but ugh, just gross all the way around. Just don't like it. It's definitely my least favorite season.
Well, yeah, I would imagine. Well, not even imagine. I've seen some of it. There's just a lot more work to do. Like dealing with the snow whenever it piles up and just gets in the way of everything, and maintaining vehicles becomes a lot more difficult. You know, from having to change out tires and then just keeping windshields and keeping doors from freezing. Well, doors freezing. That's something that happened down here during our little weather pattern. But I'm sure all the time that's something that they have to deal with up there. Just having to break ice off your vehicle just to be able to use it. Um, you know, but talking about extreme cold, recently I watched a documentary on the coldest city on Earth, Yakutsk, Russia, up in northeastern Siberia. So not that far from the Bering Strait, but much further inland. So it's a continental cold climate. And I don't think it's within the Arctic Circle, but it's pretty damn close. Um, like it is, yeah. Uh, and the coldest temperatures that I think they recorded there was like negative 70 something Celsius, which and that's like negative 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Think about it, 90 below. That is just positively insane. And even in, you know, like 60 below or whatever, which apparently is just a normal winter for them, um, you know, their vehicles, they don't use cars that much there when they don't have to, just because uh, the impracticalities of using them. Like, they can't turn them off. Like, if once the car is on, they have to leave it on, or else it just won't start back up. The oil will freeze, the fuel will freeze. Yeah, everything on there is just going to get covered in ice. You can't touch metal with bare skin, or else you will just get stuck to it, like in a very, very short period of time. Walking around with any part of your skin uncovered, is just begging for frostbite. Like just the insanity of living in a place like that. Um, the most scary thing though is the fact that it's sparsely populated, and Yakutsk is a pretty major city, but outside of that, you're just driving through miles and miles and miles of countryside it's almost uninhabited. And if you break down, if your vehicle can't handle the cold, or there's something else wrong with it and it breaks down, you probably will die, because you're going to lose the heat of that vehicle, and there's going to be basically nobody else out there to help you. So that's scary, when you think about that. So we have a lot to be thankful for, anywhere in the United States outside of maybe northern Alaska.
Yeah, we do. I mean, it's just to the point. Ugh, winter here isn't even that bad to complain about when it comes to that bitter cold. But well, and the snow too. I guess we definitely don't get as much snow as the Northeast or even the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. It's we, I guess we're fortunate. But anyway, on Earth, of course, it would be in Russia. They must drink a lot of vodka. It doesn't freeze, liquor. So they could probably run their cars on liquor. But in that temperature, who knows? It probably could freeze. Then the vodka would probably taste even better, and you have vodka ice cubes. Anyway, um, it's kind of neat too, because it's like you get all kinds of different wildlife when it comes to the different types of climates there are, and the different, well, flora and fauna, which is basically, with the animals, what I said. And I, th- I think how animals adapt is just absolutely fascinating, and how they've been able to adapt, and how they've been able to sustain their lives throughout their repeated generations in many places in the world. I just always have found that to be one of the more fascinating subjects there is, because I don't believe in evolution, but it's really neat to me on how animals of all different various types have had to adapt to their environments and make ways of survival. I mean, ducks, for instance, ducks are probably one of the cooler birds, I think, in my opinion. And they have feathers, but their feathers aren't like of a normal bird. If like a normal bird gets wet, it'll weigh them down, and those feathers, won't serve a purpose. Where a duck, they get slick, they're able to fly off and take flight right from the water. I mean, it's pretty fascinating. So I just think that's just cool on how animals have been able to adapt to their various environments, and from there, been able to sustain themselves in those environments.
Yeah, whether through adaptation or simple design, um, you've got a lot of just absolutely unique creatures that thrive in environments that even humans, which are remarkably adaptable, just could not survive in. Like, honestly, we're more naturally built to live in hotter climates. Um, it's just that with the advent of things like clothes, a lot of our natural mechanisms for that are mitigated. But because being of a European background, we come from areas that generally have rather heavy clothing by comparison. Of course, you've got the whole Greek background, so that's somewhat mitigated. But me being, straight up Anglo-Saxon Germanic, oh, absolutely, we're used to being covered head to toe, and growing a pretty decent amount of hair to boot. So, you know, humanity's innovation of sweat, and the ability to create evaporative cooling is kind of reduced in our case. Um, which is part of why we don't handle the summer that well. But for sure, it's an interesting thing that you can look at and see um, how between clothes and tool making and natural, more animalistic styles of adaptation, we've come to live just about anywhere on planet Earth, which very few creatures can make that boast. I think mosquitoes are the only other ones that maybe have us beat, and maybe roaches. But uh, yeah, for sure. Um, Animals do adapt, and even ones that are specialized can eventually adapt or be adapted. There's often genetic engineering and selective breeding that occurs with things like dogs, where they have become just as adaptable as us in many cases. So it is fascinating how you see that. Um, and it's just wondrous, you know. There's not, it's just, you can't help being awed by it. It seems so simple, but yet it's so sublime. I really think that that is just a very fundamental understanding of the greatness of God when you look at things like that. Like, that is something that is so deep in its impressiveness that you just can't help but be enthralled by it in some way.
Oh, totally enthralled by it. One of my favorite things is spell dog backwards. What do you get? I'm not saying that God is a dog. I just think it's kind of neat because of how they've adapted to us and how they exert or exude many qualities. You know how they say like God is love. Well, dogs love. I mean, I'm gonna overplay my hand on this one, but I am, a dog person, and definitely have grown up with dogs my whole life. And they make you want to go outside. They make you want to take them for a walk. Like they make you want to go and do things to be active, to get away from the TV, to get away from whatever is stressing you out, and come back to nature in a sense. And that's so nice. That's so refreshing because it means that you're going back to like pretty much the only two species on Earth that had have learned to coexist and basically grow up with one another through the ages, which is just incredible. I mean, we took a wild wolf and domesticated it. I mean,
You know,
that's just so wild. Like you said, an absolute awe of it, which is even cooler because of how dogs have been so important to human development. I mean, pretty much all around the world, people have dogs, and it's just not uncommon.
yeah. Another animal that really strikes a chord with that is horses. Horses are probably the second closest animal next to dogs to humans, and would be considered probably the highest form of livestock animal. You know, they're the only thing that really keeps them from being a pet rather than a farm animal is their sheer size. Honestly, and people bonded with them like they would with a dog in many cases. And horses have deep personalities too that you can really come get attuned with. Like, people who work with them all the time really come to understand them as individual beings, um, and have a very similar connection to them that we would with a dog. So it's not just dogs. Dogs, while we put the most investment and the most time into them, and we've engineered them the most to suit our needs, horses too have a lot of these traits, and there are many other animals that can and do have them when they're domesticated or when circumstances bring them and humans together in some ways. Not to say that violence and stuff between them doesn't happen or that it's always the human's fault, but um, yeah, like these connections are not an entirely unique thing at all by any means. And I feel like it's just a testament to the stewardship that humanity was entrusted with over planet Earth. I feel like that's sort of the role that we abandoned in many ways, but it's a vestige of that role in some of these animals that we have favored over the millennia.
Oh yeah, there's certainly like good. Well, there's certainly, I don't want to using the word good. There's certainly animals that we have selected to suit our needs and adapt to us as we have adapted to them. And everybody makes a big deal about something like Shark Week. That's cool and all, and they're definitely killing machines. But there's a lot of hype around Shark Week. When I was watching an episode and they were talking about killer whales and how intelligent they are, and how two killer whales teamed up to hunt down, track, and kill a great white that ate one of their babies. I'm like, that is some that's not like an animal thing to do. Like that's some straight vengeance. Like that sounds very human to me. Like that behavior is just so doesn't seem like it would come, from the animal world. And the way they devised the plot to kill the great white, which they ended up doing, was just as bizarre, just as human. And it really, really spoke to me where it was just, you could just feel it. And for them, for those killer whales losing their baby, it's basically vengeance from two parents going all like killer whale Liam Neeson on them, and from Taken, and just taking out the shark and basically having feasting on them. And it was just so bizarre. But then again, nature makes you think about things that on how you said, like, man has the divine mind and is separate from the animal mind. Well, obviously God made that so, and the stewardship that we have over those animals, like when it comes to something that's that human like of a quality, oh man, that just kind of makes you, I don't know how to describe it, but it just makes you rethink a lot of things.
Yeah, I think that all that does, though, is it shows just how advanced the animal mind is, and how much it affects humans. We try to think of all our thoughts, we try to think of ourselves as purely rational creatures, and that's simply not true. Not only are we not rational creatures purely, but being a pure rational creature doesn't solve all our problems either. There are so many things about us that are not rational. And I feel like by looking at animals, it gives us a frame of reference to see the irrational, the instinctive parts of ourselves in some of the higher forms of God's creation outside of humanity. Not to say we should go around emulating animals all the time, but it at least allows us to sort of balance and reality check ourselves when we start creating these grandiose, theoretical, logical visions of humanity. Like the family vengeance thing, that's an animal act. You say it sounds human. Well, I think that's just more humans being animals. it's based entirely on group survival, and punishing out groups for attacking the in group is a very animal thing. It's tribal. Tribalism is an animal instinct. And so, really, I think fundamentally that's what it is. It is an excellent demonstration of the animal mind in action outside of a human context.
That is really interesting that you bring that up because, I mean, instinct is irrational, or well, not completely irrational, but it's something that's within all of us. Like some of us have better instincts than others. I definitely feel at times or see at times, but that's just it. I just said feel at times. I didn't really think that through. I didn't really say how I thought that through. I guess that's a hard thing to describe because feelings are a hard thing to describe. Intuition is a hard thing to describe because if you get that gut feeling and instinctually that it's something that you just automatically aware of, how does that come to be? That's just so cool to me on how it can manifest itself, or you develop it over time. So that is definitely not on the topic at all either. but in nature, I guess you would say for that peer group survival that attacking the out group member or members is acting completely on instinct. Yeah, and I mean, parents or protective family members, yeah, probably seeking vengeance would turn you into a pretty hedonistic animal to get rid of or banish somebody's enemy. So that does make sense now that I'm kind of thinking about it. But see, I went irrational to rational, back to irrational. So, I mean, with that, like, what as far as the great outdoors go, what's like a perfect day for you?
I guess, do you mean just in terms of weather, specifically?
Yeah, yeah,
Well, I'm pretty boring in that regard. I like, a day that's sunny but not hot. You know, clear, but once again, the sun's not beaming down and just making it hot. Low humidity. That's important. I don't like high humidity. I've dealt with it so much that having my skin be clammy just from walking outside, that's not fun. Um, but yeah, I would say that in Texas, the early spring, so around late March, early April, is probably the absolute best time of year because my allergies hit in early March, sometimes late February. But once those pass, and it's like I said, around the start of April, it's just great. Like you just have perfect weather outside. I just want to be outside all the time, and I usually am if I can be, under those circumstances. So it's a very short window though, because once you hit May, it's summertime, and it very quickly gets too hot to really enjoy the outdoors. So hopefully, Colorado summers will offer that same sort of experience with a much more idyllic mountain background for me.
yeah, for sure. I mean, that's definitely one of those things where it just, I mean, who doesn't like low humidity? You got to be an absolute lizard person to like humidity. Ugh. But in some senses, humidity can be kind of nice at times. Not to the point where it's completely, just enough to where you're sweating just a little bit. I know, I'm weird like that. I like the heat, but not terrible. 80, sunny with a breeze is pretty much ideal. Obviously clear outside. A little cloud, a little overcast too. Doesn't hurt every once in a while. But having that breeze, a little bit of a breeze, is always perfect. But shoot, I mean, Michigan has just such screwy weather, and over the past few summers, it's been really up and down. Over the past few winters, it's been up and down. And then the spring sometimes really just hasn't been spring at all. And then I feel like more so we've been having more of an extended autumn. And the autumns have just actually been the nicer parts of the year, to where going into autumn kind of makes it feel like summer a little bit again. And then it just gets nicer. And about mid-November, it's just a steep drop off and doesn't come back until, well, now probably didn't have hit snow in early May. So I'd say about mid-May. And then from there, all the way up until, like I said, mid-November again. So it's just on that cycle of about 6 months on, 6 months off. And it just, like some days in the summer, like especially this summer, was just so hot. And then the rain just pummeled us, which just wasn't awesome to want going outside and wanting to do anything. But yeah, I mean, just that hot humidity doesn't knocks it basically right out of you when you want to go and do something. Same thing with the cold, but at least with the cold you can always put on more layers and get to where you're going. With the humidity, you get in a hot car and you feel exhausted after you've gotten out of it. So I don't know. I mean, it's a weird thing, and I just am built for a much warmer climate than I am being in this, whatever the heck's going on in this state.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever seen anybody who's honestly liked Midwestern weather. Not to knock any one particular area, but yeah, like, people love the mountains. Some like the East Coast. They like uh, the colorful falls and stuff like that with all the trees. They like the Appalachians. Some like the South. A lot of people like me think it's just too damn hot most of the time. Love the people, hate the climate. But yeah, your ideal day is 80. Mine's about 65. Yeah, I like it a little cooler. That might just be a bit of a grass is greener effect. I'm so used to it being hot that it's just a respite or a reprieve for me. But yeah, if it gets to about 80, I start sweating pretty bad. So yeah, no hotter than about 75, and preferably in the 60s is what I like whenever I go outside. With a nice breeze, especially if you're by a body of water, it's just great.
You always got to have that breeze. I mean, that breeze just breaks up everything. Uh, yeah, and then I mean, as far as, let's see, the other aesthetics we can kind of put into it. Obviously, being by the water. I mean, that just right there straight reminds me of going to the pool as a kid in the park, sipping on Slurpees, or just playing street hockey or baseball, and just enjoying it. I mean, man, those summers were some great summers. And then, of course, you always had that one friend who has a boat, And you try to use that as much as possible. But yeah, from there, I mean, man, just like from the birds, the trees, and then the other wildlife that's possibly out there in Michigan. We definitely don't get snakes. I mean, we barely have our fair share of snakes. As far as funky other, spiders go, kind of have those. And then as far as like anything off the wall crazy, can't really think of anything besides like mountain lions. Mountain lions are probably the most dangerous. Well, bears. Bears and mountain lions are probably the two most dangerous big animals we have. Other than that, I mean, as far as northern Michigan goes, they got their fair share of those up there. But yeah, I mean, it's so cool just to go out and experience that and go on like a trail and see that all around whichever part of Michigan, states really. Oh, and yeah, I mean, it's so cool to just see that and see all like the flora and the fauna, like I said, and just to experience it. I mean, you can't like I hate all the artificial like scents and stuff. You can't really capture an artificial scent like as far as a flower goes. Like going out and smelling that flower, plant, or tree, you just can't get that through like an artificial candle or something like that.
For sure, for sure. All we make is a weak imitation of the creations of God. But um, yeah, you know, just about all that wildlife you talk about in Michigan, Colorado will have more of it. But if you ask me, that's just good hunting. That's just a good way to stock up on meat in your freezer and save on food. So, I'm not too bummed out about that for sure. Um, but I was going to say something I forgot. But yeah, um, just going up there in general, I just feel like I'll just prefer it. Like everything about it just seems like it'll be nicer to me, other than the winters. But you know what? That's fine. I can enjoy some winter activity sometimes, and you know, I'll be living in a small enough area that I can just put a little heater in there and it'll be just fine. But now I remember the other thing about Texas and about the deep south in general that I despise worse than the heat is the blasted bugs. The red wasps and the mosquitoes, and not so much bees. They're actually serving a purpose, but even they can get annoying sometimes. And lake bugs and gnats and chiggers and everything in between. That's the one thing we have in abundance down here that I am not a fan of. There's snakes, but honestly, you don't encounter them too often if you're not trudging through thigh high grass. Um, you want to have a dog with you or something if you're doing that anyway, a lot of the time. But uh, yeah, like what I hate about being outside the most in the summer is not even the heat, because I can deal with the heat a lot of times. It's the bugs. Like that's what I genuinely hate about it more than anything else. I mean, I probably because I got a bit of a pathology regarding red wasps, because I got stung by them probably about 20 times as a kid, real bad. Like they just hated me. So I'm not a fan of those. Um, Mosquitoes aren't fun. They eat me up too when I go outside. So there's all kinds of things that yeah, I'll be glad to be away from.
Ugh, mosquitoes. Just there's not enough spiders to get those mosquitoes. The bats, we definitely have bats. which serve way more purposes than what I ever thought they would have, besides fighting crime in Gotham City. But I mean, they do a good job at getting rid of a lot of the stuff that you just don't want to deal with. But that's cool. Like insects, insects to birds to bats to all those things. And I'm coming up on, the creepy crawly season. But it's cool because they all have purposes, and those ecosystems and the ecological systems that are in place are just so, it's just so fascinating on how it all even just operates, and how, like, heck, dolphins have their own language. Like, they've just determined that have their own languages. So I just can't even imagine what other animals might have to communicate with each other. And that's just pretty amazing stuff. But where was I going with this? I forgot.
Well, you were talking about ecology and how bugs and bats and everything plays a role in it.
And then, okay. Yeah, I mean, and then you can just see that, like, that creation being in that ecology is just another facet of it. And that ecology explains, well, why the bat's got to eat the bug, why the bug's got to eat, well, let's just be nice, the dirt, or why the ants have to build their nest, but why the wasps have to build their nest and survive. That murder hornets thing was just wild for a while. I really thought, like, the whole United States is just going to get murder hornets. Those things just look pissed. Those things just look pissed off, too. But we also have kind of the smaller version of that, I guess, like yellow jackets. Yellow jackets are just nasty little buggers. I've been stung by those multiple times, too. So I just, whenever they're around, I don't like them. But they don't really serve much of a purpose besides just, being mean. Bumblebees definitely serve a purpose. So, I mean, the ecology of things is just, or the ecology of nature is just, it's obviously fascinating. And you said it makes for good hunting. And that's one thing I've never done is actually been able to hunt. And that's definitely something I would probably like to do. That'd probably be pretty cool. What's like your biggest prize catch you've ever had while hunting?
Well, I've gotten a fairly good deer at one point in the past. I haven't deer hunted nearly as much as, a proper Southern son should, but definitely done it before. And, hogs are always good because you can just kill as many of them as you want just about down here in Texas. They're a pest, going up through the South and through much of the Midwest. You can just go around, get open season in so many states on them because, yeah, they just overrun areas if you don't. But yeah, deer and hogs, that's pretty much the vast majority of what people in East Texas hunt. South Texas has a little more variety, but less wildlife density, less population density of humans as well, so it kind of balances out. But people pay big bucks down there to get on game ranches and hunt. Out here, it's mostly just people putting food on the table.
Yeah, deer were pretty big for a while here. Like they almost said open season on deer here a couple times. I do remember that for sure. But yeah, warthogs always. Pigs are, I don't know, they're good eating, but that's about it for me. Weird looking creatures, but I'm pretty sure they seem like quite a menace. And that good old Texas Arkansas rivalry is starting to heat back up again. So looks like the Woo Pig Suey is going to be back in full swing pretty soon.
I don't really know much about this rivalry you speak of, unless it's a sports ball related thing, which I don't follow at all. Or if there's something political that I just haven't paid attention to. But yeah, up there northeast Texas, man, that is like hog hunting mecca in that area around Texarkana, North Louisiana, Northeast Texas, Southern Arkansas. Yeah, tons of it up there. So for sure, um, there definitely be plenty of bacon to be had in those areas. But I'm looking forward to some bigger game when I move up to the mountains. Looking forward to. I'm gonna have to do a little bit more reading on Colorado's hunting laws and how their licensing and everything works, what their limits are. Make sure I don't shoot nothing endangered. But elk is something that people go up there to hunt a lot, and to my understanding, it works just like a big deer in many cases. So you take it down, you fill your meat up with enough, or fill your freezer up with enough meat for a good winter. Make a lot of burgers, a lot of jerky, a lot of sausage. Combine that with some pork or beef or whatever, and you got you a good meat that you can feed yourself or even a family for months at a time. So it's just good. You got those and moose, which those are probably I don't even think there's very many of them in Colorado, but probably maybe endangered if they are. So I don't know that much about hunting them anyway, but elk for sure. And then yeah, bears up there probably endangered as well. Um, in any case, their meat, from what I understand, is pretty tough, not really that good eating. So unless it was survival, I'd probably mostly focus on deer and elk and just large game like that up there.
I bet bet you those wouldn't be too hard to spot in the wild, but taking those animals out would probably be just insane. Just the sheer size of an elk or a moose, and they can definitely do some damage too. But I remember my uncle always telling me hunting stories on how he took out a black bear, and it took him 6 shots to bring him down, 8 shots total to kill it from a 30-06. And then he went elk hunting too in the Rockies, and that he said that was probably one of the wildest things he's ever done. He got an elk, and I don't want to pull a complete Joe Rogan here, but I had elk meat, and it's pretty amazing. But yeah, he just him describing it and the way they ran up the sides of the mountains, and it was just almost like a 90-degree angle, and they were just climbing it like it was nothing. And these animals were the sizes of Chevy Suburbans. Like, it just, to me, that just boggles the mind that they could even do that with their sheer size. And then it wasn't just one; it was an entire herd of just migrating, running along the Rockies like it was nothing. That just kind of stuff just amazes me because of how they like I said earlier, on how they've been able to adapt and be able to just constantly try to survive and constantly have that instinct to survive, which is always astounding.
Yeah. Well, off the note of killing things, um, and kind of going back more towards the pets and stuff. What are animals that you don't maybe keep as a pet or anything, but you just like seeing them in nature? Like you're just like, oh, that's cool. If it's a specific type of bird, or I know on the rare occasion that I see foxes around here, those are always cool to see because you don't see them that often, but you'll see them dart across and like, oh man, that's a fox. You know, Stuff that's kind of fairly uncommon, but you see them, and then maybe animals, not counting bugs because that's an easy target, but you know, animals that you maybe don't like. Like I know possums around here are infamous. People call them the zombie rat because they kind of act like a big zombie just shambling around, and they get rabies a lot. Well, people say they don't, but I don't believe them. Raccoons, they're they're good and a bad. People say they're cute or whatever, but they can cause a lot of trouble, and you better not corner one if you know what's good for you. And they definitely get rabies. So yeah, it's a mixed bag. But what are yours?
I like raccoons. Like raccoon, I think a raccoon would probably be the coolest, the weirdest pet, but the coolest pet to probably have. Because, I mean, they're basically like goats. They eat anything. But they're also highly resourceful. They find constant ways to survive. They don't ever seem like they're, as far as like them being, I don't know if they're technically rodents or marsupials, like the possum is. Um, Possum's a marsupial too, so they might be in the same family. But then again, I don't know if raccoons are rodents. Anyway, just you know, trash pandas are just the coolest. Like they just got that attitude, but they're kind of cute and furry at the same time, and you want to be like, oh, look at that little cute little thing, and then it's gonna bite your face off. So I think it's I think it's kind of sweet, but at the same time, it's an animal you definitely wouldn't really destroy everything that you own.
Yeah, for sure. You know, there's this big phenomenon of people keeping animals as pets that either they really shouldn't, like maybe that animal just shouldn't be kept as a pet, or more often, I think, is these people that do it are just not ready to take care of this pet. You know, I think it's an issue they would have with a dog or anything else. It's just that they compound it by getting animals that require a lot more specialized care and a lot more skill to handle, given that they're not selectively bred for, human interaction. And they think, oh, it's cool, it's cute, it's unique. Well, yeah, but you don't think about the actual other aspects to it. This results in a lot of dumped animals. It results in lots of uh, creatures that are in areas they're not native to. It messes up a lot of ecology for sure. Though it arguably also introduces things in a way that can diversify the ecology in the long run as well. But that's a whole nother debate um, on that. It's probably very situational. But yeah, we mess with a lot of things, and we arguably mess up a lot of things too. But uh, that just all depends on. That's why stewardship is important. That's why understanding and valuing the creations that God has placed in your care, um, in my view, is uh, an important and often overlooked part of our duty as human beings.
Well, even like the differences, and you notice it between dogs and cats. Like, as far as dogs go, they're naturally bred to be our companions, and short, sad as it is, the shorter lives they lead. You wish they would be with us for all the years. And then cats. Well, I'm not much of a cat person. I don't mind cats. It's not like I don't like them, but you know, cats hang on forever and keep going. And can live almost. I've known cats that have lived 25, 26 years at times, and it just seems to me that they could care less if humans exist. So it is funny on how you get that dichotomy where you have a dog who's just the happiest animal, so thrilled that you exist, and so thrilled that you're there for them, and they're gone in 10 to 12 years depending on the breed, all that good stuff. So it is funny on how that dichotomy is out of uh uh all dogs go to heaven, where obviously heaven is full of dogs and doing dog like things, and then you have the underbelly. I always get a kick out of that because it's so funny and how that's juxtaposed, and the attitude of the animals towards humans, like it reflects itself onto it. And I'm like, the person who made this movie, I'm like, yeah, they're definitely a dog person. Only dog people have that kind of attitude towards cats at times, which is funny.
Yeah, I've always liked cats too. I think they're cool. I think they're kind of fun to pet, and they make good lap pets for sure. A lot of my dogs end up turning into lap dogs just because they just want to jump up and cuddle in my lap a lot of times. The only thing is they're too big to be lap dogs, so they just kind of stand up on my leg, you know, and just put their head up on my chest wanting to be petted. But yeah, um, dogs being pack animals, I feel like the wolf pack and what it developed into played a major part in domestication and how they interact with humans because cats are much more solitary. They act entirely in their own interests because they don't have an in group. Dogs are naturally wired to operate on an in group, out group basis. And so humans who act much the same way, um, and are also, mid to large size mammals, it's synergistic. You know, you can very logically see why dogs and humans um, are friends in many cases. Um, oh well, am I cutting out? Yeah. So I like looking at and analyzing all these little factors and these little aspects of why things are the way they are. So
Yeah, I mean, and dogs are pretty cool with that. And they just have a general attitude as far as being just so in tune with their own kind and another another complete different species of animal, which is well, we're not technically animals, but to us to them we are. Um, Yeah, and I mean, dogs definitely can adapt to that kind of thing. Well, it just shows like how their instinct adapts adapts to those situations. Out of them, but in a sense it hasn't. So that's kind of the cool part about nature. Like you don't ever, get that completely out of the animal. Like you can't ever breed out or weed out their instinct completely, because they're always going to have those instincts to act like the animal they are.
Well, and when you try to, it's usually not a good thing either, right? Like this code, this gene exists unless you can isolate it and get rid of it through selective breeding or more advanced methods. It's like it's just not good for them because they were designed this way for a reason. Like it exists in their nature for a very specific reason. And so, what humans usually do instead through selective breeding is redirect these instincts and these energies towards a productive activity. Like, for example, turning hunting animals into herding ones, or fine tuning what sort of prey that they like to hunt. Things of that sort, which are, I think, perfectly fine and natural ways of utilizing animals. Um, but yeah, it's all, and you can't breed the animal out of an animal. Well, you can't. This goes back to my earlier point. You can't breed the animal out of a human either, and this is something we forget so much. And we operate on this assumption that if we civilize everybody, everything will be fine. But that's not true. We become over civilized in so many ways. And when you forget one part of your nature, the other one suffers as well. So it's a recurring lesson, and it's something that nobody likes talking about. I feel like it's just something that it doesn't fit the narrative at all. It's one of the most anti-narrative things possible, and so nobody latches onto it, and it kind of frustrates me because it's just so it itself is logical when you look at things.
Yeah, and I mean it's something that's so it's essentially human, and something that's so transcendently not human, because in our very nature, we're separated by distinct in groups of people, but even within those in groups of people, we're separated. And there's hierarchies. There's different groups of people. I'm not trying to, and there's different races, different ethnicities. There's different biological sicknesses from race to race. So there's all these different reoccurring things, or biological differences too, which aren't necessarily, don't have to be diseases. They can be good things as well. But to me, like, there's differences within all of that too. And that shows that there is a hierarchy in that sense. And I'm not saying that in the racial sense. I'm saying that as like you have races and then you have the different ethnicities underneath them. So that shows that there's that break off, and how different culture is. In a sense, animals have to have that like sense of pack mentality and culture too to survive, because there's animals that are probably like related to the wolf, which are pack animals, but yet there's wolves that find a mate, and it's just them. It's just them producing litters, and those litters move on, and they those certain kinds of wolves go and produce more litters. So you have the mother and father, and then they stay solitary away from their babies when they're ready to get out and create new wolves. So it's kind of cool, and transcends nature, transcends us, and you see that. Well, I guess you could call it, in a sense, a Fibonacci sequence all over the place, and how those different things relate to how nature is, and it reflects on us. And not to say, we should act like animals and be in different packs and stuff, but then again, that could be something that could solve some problems. But more so with humanity, it's more of on an an ideal basis, rather than in the animal kingdom, where it's that instinctual, basis of existence.
It is on the surface, but at the same time, I think we rationalize a lot of that away, especially in a world where everything has to be rational. The post Enlightenment view that everything has to have a physical or sensory explanation in order to be true. Well, what you do is you take basic elements that have existed since time immemorial, since before you knew how to record anything, and you try to rationalize them as being something much more recent or much more akin to a more recent idea in your mind. And it's just not true. This is something much more primordial, and it's at the core of what you are as a being. It cannot be removed or trained out or corrected because it's not a mistake. See, like, yeah, like, we are rational, but we also rationalize a lot of our irrational behavior. We act on a very instinctive in group basis, and then we take steps to try to make it seem like we're not, because that doesn't sound right from our rational mind's point of view. In a sense, we're kind of schizophrenic in that way, because our two minds, as it were, are not in line, and they're not harmonious. There's no symphonia going on there. And so, yeah, being out of line with God will do that to you. And so naturally, there's a conflict within us. So, yeah, I think that understanding that is the first step on the road to improvement for a lot of people. And, you know, material improvement, which is very rational, but also just being at peace with oneself, you know, like accepting that you can't know everything, even about your own self. And I think that that in itself speaks to our own spark of the divine. You know, it's very appropriate that we can't understand our entire nature because we can't understand the nature of God. So, I think that's really honestly about all I got on that. And most all of I've got on nature. I mean, it was a pretty short topic in my view. Um, it's something that it's just so fundamental, you know. It's something that you don't need to go on exhaustively in a documentary style about, because that's what documentaries are for, and we're not the experts, quote unquote, in that very limited data dominated sense. But yeah, I feel like we covered the essence of it, at least from my end. You can talk all you want to after me, but yeah. So I figure I'll let you go ahead and do that.
I mean, it is fundamental. It's absolutely fundamental because, the people who don't get away from their computer screens are missing, nature and life and their very own existence that they right in front of their eyes. I mean, it's you could experience looking at pictures of nature, and like we've touched on, you could experience going to church online. You could see all that through the internet, right? But that doesn't help anything. That's not going to help with somebody's divine nature or somebody's rational nature. So I mean, it helps that the great outdoors, be that as it may, have the ability to balance us and find that symphonia, and not be disharmonious to nature, or nature to us, which definitely can occur for sure. Um, and I think a lot of Eastern philosophy gets that really, really right and has a lot of unique takes on it because of how much in tune they were, even from the Native Americans allegedly migrating to the United States, um, and them being culturally very connected to what the Asian cultures would probably be more akin to, and a lot of tribal cultures do have all that nature kind of worship stuff ingrained into them. But that's just it, where it's like, you don't just worship a bear to worship a bear. Like, it's neat because the bear provides. If you killed it, it provides a lot of things back to you. So in those cultures, all that stuff was just so fascinating because of how appreciative they were and how spiritually connected they were to everything in the world. They felt like they had to balance that out. Oh, if I killed a deer, well, what about the babies? What about the the rest of the deer population? They felt bad for killing one, but in turn, they know they needed to survive. So, I mean, it's just fascinating on how all that can be, broken down from our like most basic, I got to kill something to eat level to, well, I just killed something, but now I feel really guilty about it. Gods that I worship to make up for this. So like even in our most animalistic nature, it's cool because it's just basic human instincts all the way up to self-realization that you took a life and you feel bad about doing it. So I mean, it's just across the board, innately it's not only animal, but it is something that is human.
Yeah, I feel like that example with, I don't think it's so much, at least in my experience, that you feel bad that you killed something. I think it's more they felt bad because of the prospect that they threw nature into imbalance. You know, that the killing that they did may have negatively impacted nature around them. And so they viewed that as being an offense, not because they killed something. You know, it's more just because, well, I've damaged the ecosystem. They view it more like pollution than like murder in that sense. You know, like you cut down a tree that provides oxygen or habitats for animals or things of that sort. And so you throw, especially in very animistic and naturalistic societies where nature was their god, it was the only understanding of God that they had. And so, yeah, for sure. I think that's a very deep connection actually to the concept of stewardship of the earth. But um, yeah, I don't. That there's a whole nother debate, which we can cover in a later episode about the sanctity of life, about that concept, about where it originates and to what extent it applies, and what has been extrapolated from it over the centuries. Um, but yeah, personally, I think that it's an entirely different concept in play here. Um, but once again, that's another episode. Um, so once again, I'm honestly about done. So if you got anything else, then I think we can probably wrap it up.
Short and sweet, kind of like that nice sunny day that we all look forward to. with a little breeze. It's always a nice. So yeah, that was a pleasant one. I appreciate it. And see y'all later.
All right, y'all take care. It was a pleasure. See y'all soon.